Eli had always believed that his life would be ordinary. At 24, he worked as an engineer on the human colony of Vierlia, repairing starship engines and maintaining life support systems. He had plans, small and simple, for a life that involved quiet nights in his small apartment, occasional visits to the colony market, and perhaps one day, a family of his own. But that life ended the day the Thrillian Council arrived. He had been summoned to the council chambers, a place humans rarely entered. The ceiling was high, glowing with pale blue light, and the walls shimmered with patterns that seemed to move when one blinked. Eli's stomach twisted as he stepped forward, unsure of what awaited him. He had heard rumors about the council's methods, how they could make humans feel insignificant without even raising a clawed hand. At the center of the chamber stood Vorina. Eli had only seen her from afar in news holograms, but seeing her in person was something else entirely. She was a Thrillian, their species towering over humans, with long limbs and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see into the very soul. She was 57 years old, but age meant little for the Thrillians, who matured slowly and lived far longer than humans. Still, the difference in years made Eli feel strangely small, and yet he could not deny a sense of awe. "You are Eli, correct?" Vorina's voice was calm, soft, yet carried authority. Every word she spoke seemed to resonate in the chamber. "You have been chosen to unite our peoples." Eli blinked. "Chosen for what?" "For a marriage," Vorina replied simply. A wave of disbelief washed over him. Marriage, to her, a Thrillian woman 33 years older than him. It sounded like a joke, a story humans would tell in whispers. Yet the council's stern faces left no room for doubt. This was real. "You mean marriage?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," the council confirmed in unison. "This union is necessary. You will help strengthen the bond between humans and Thrillians. It is your duty." Eli swallowed hard. Duty had never felt like this. He had repaired engines, fixed pipes, built small machines, but marriage, with a Thrillian woman older than his parents. He wanted to protest, to run, but something about Vorina's eyes held him in place. They were not cruel or unkind, only observant, patient, and strangely knowing. I don't understand," he said. "Why me?" Vorina stepped closer, her long limbs moving with grace. "Because you are human, and humans have a way of surprising us. You are adaptable, curious, and brave, traits we need." Eli felt a flicker of pride, quickly buried under waves of fear. He wanted to resist. He wanted to argue that humans should not be pawns in alien politics. But the council's gaze was heavy, and he knew that refusal was impossible. The next few days were a whirlwind. Eli's apartment was cleared, his possessions packed, and he was escorted to Vorina's residence on the orbital station above the colony. The station was unlike anything Eli had seen before. Its corridors were wide, with walls that shimmered faintly and floors that seemed to hum with energy. He felt small walking among the Thrillians, who moved with natural elegance, their presence commanding the space around them. Vorina's home was a large chamber overlooking the stars. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a breathtaking view of Vierlia cities below. Eli tried to take in the beauty, but anxiety gnawed at him. This was not his world. Everything about it felt foreign, overwhelming, and impossibly advanced. Vorina greeted him each morning, her presence calm, her demeanor unwavering. She asked him about his work, his interests, and even his dreams. At first, Eli tried to keep his answers short, unsure of how to behave around a Thrillian so powerful and experienced. But he found that Vorina listened not just with her ears, but with an understanding that felt deep. "You worry too much," she said one evening, as Eli fidgeted with a small device he had brought from the colony. "Humans often focus on what might go wrong, but danger is not always what you expect. Learn to see it before it reaches you." Eli frowned. "How do you mean?" Vorina smiled faintly. I mean that life is unpredictable, but you can control how you respond. You can adapt. That is why you were chosen." He wanted to believe her, but every instinct screamed otherwise. He was a human, small, untrained, and far from powerful. How could he possibly match a being like Vorina? The first week was tense. Eli tried to assert some independence, insisting on handling small tasks himself, refusing help. Vorina allowed it but observed silently, correcting him only when necessary. It was frustrating. He felt patronized, yet strangely safe under her watchful eyes. Then came the first test. Eli was repairing a minor power conduit in one of the station's outer sectors when alarms blared. The lights flickered and a low hum filled the corridor. He froze. He had trained for emergencies, but this was not training. Panels sparked, and he realized that a sudden power surge could knock out the station's life support. Before panic could take hold, Vorina appeared. She moved swiftly, her hands glowing faintly as she manipulated the energy fields. Eli watched, stunned, as she stabilized the conduit with an ease he could not comprehend. "You should have called for help," she said softly, almost as if scolding him. I didn't think," Eli began, but she interrupted gently. "You thought you could handle it alone. Humans often do, but sometimes help is necessary." That night, Eli could not sleep. He kept thinking about the way Vorina had acted, how she had anticipated the problem, corrected it, and protected him. There was no arrogance, no desire to dominate, only efficiency, wisdom, and care. He realized, with a mixture of awe and fear, that she was not just a diplomat or an alien figurehead. She was someone who could change the course of events in ways he could not yet understand. Days turned into weeks. The human colony whispered about him, the man who was forced to marry an alien decades older than himself. Some mocked, others pitied him, but Eli found himself less concerned with their opinions. Instead, he focused on learning. Vorina taught him about Thrillian culture, their history, and their unique abilities. Slowly, he began to see patterns in her thinking, strategies in her decisions, and a depth of intelligence that far surpassed anything he had imagined. Yet fear lingered. At night, he sometimes woke sweating, imagining what life would be like if he failed, if the Union collapsed, or if the Thrillians deemed him unworthy. He wanted to flee, but a part of him could not. He could not deny the curiosity, the thrill, and the strange comfort in being near Vorina. One evening, while looking out at the stars, Eli finally spoke what he had been holding in for weeks. "Why me? Why not someone stronger, older, wiser?" Vorina's gaze softened. "Because you are human. Strength is not always measured in size or years. Humans have qualities we admire: courage, resilience, and the ability to adapt. You will learn more than you think, and perhaps I will learn from you as well." Eli felt a shiver run down his spine. The idea that he could teach an alien, let alone someone like Vorina, seemed impossible. Yet her words planted a seed of hope. Perhaps this marriage was not only a trap, a duty, or a political move. Perhaps it could be something more. The first part of his journey was ending, but the true challenge was just beginning. As Eli lay in his new quarters, staring at the stars, he could not shake the feeling that his life had changed forever. And deep down, he knew one thing. No one, not the council, not the colony, not even himself, could have predicted what would happen next. Eli had begun to understand that living with Vorina was nothing like he had imagined. It was not just a marriage, it was a new world. Every day brought lessons, small at first, then larger, that tested his patience, his mind, and even his courage. Vorina did not treat him as a child, nor did she demand obedience. She expected him to think, to act, to adapt. And slowly, Eli realized that she was teaching him to see beyond his human limitations. The first morning of the second week, Eli woke to the soft hum of the orbital station. Vorina was already in the control room, monitoring starship traffic near Vierlia. He had learned that the station was not only her home, but a hub of interstellar diplomacy, a place where humans rarely ventured. Her life was busy, complex, and dangerous in ways he could barely imagine. "You're late," she said without turning around. Her voice was gentle but carried authority that made him straighten instantly. I lost track of time," he mumbled, still rubbing his eyes. "You will need to manage your time better," she replied. "It will be important soon. There is more to this station than sleeping and eating. There are duties, responsibilities, and dangers you have yet to see." Eli nodded, feeling both intimidated and intrigued. He had lived in human colonies all his life, where danger meant a broken machine or a minor accident in the workshop. Here, the smallest mistake could be catastrophic, even deadly. Vorina led him through the station, showing him systems he had only read about in manuals. Life support arrays, graviton stabilizers, and communication networks linking dozens of nearby colonies. She explained each system with patience, yet there was an underlying expectation. He must understand it all quickly and completely. Hours later, as Eli attempted to repair a small diagnostic unit, alarms blared. Red lights flashed, echoing through the corridor. His heart leaped into his throat. He had learned to handle emergencies, but nothing had prepared him for the complexity of this station. Vorina appeared as if from nowhere. Her hands glowed faintly, manipulating energy fields with precision. Eli watched stunned as she stabilized the system before he could even react. "You need to anticipate the surge," she said calmly, her eyes never leaving the diagnostics panel. "Humans are often reactive. You must be proactive." Eli swallowed hard. He wanted to protest, to say he had never dealt with this before, but he could not. He realized she was right. His training as a human engineer had taught him logic, but Vorina's methods demanded intuition, foresight, and a calm mind. Over the next few days, Eli began to notice subtle changes in himself. He moved with more confidence, spoke with more clarity, and even thought faster. Vorina encouraged him, correcting mistakes without embarrassment. She introduced him to other humans and Thrylians aboard the station, showing him how to communicate diplomatically, how to read body language, and how to make decisions that balanced courage with caution. One afternoon, while walking through the observation deck, Eli asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Why did you choose me? Surely there are other humans, stronger, smarter, braver." Vorina paused, looking out at the stars. "Strength alone is not enough. Humans are unpredictable, yes, but in ways that are valuable. You see possibilities we may overlook. You take risks we would not consider. That is why you were chosen, and perhaps I can teach you to channel that unpredictability." Eli felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. The thought that he, a young human engineer, could contribute to interstellar diplomacy alongside an experienced Thrillian diplomat seemed impossible. Yet, Vorina's confidence in him sparked something he had never felt before: hope. Days later, the station received a warning from the neighboring system. An unregistered vessel was approaching at high speed. It was unusual for the region, a quiet trade route where encounters with unknown ships were rare. Vorina gathered Eli and the security team. "Humans react with instinct," she explained. "Aliens react with calculation. You must learn to combine both. That is how we will face what is coming." The vessel appeared on the monitors, sleek and fast, its markings unfamiliar. Eli's heart pounded. He had read about space piracy and rogue ships, but seeing one so close to the colony was alarming. Vorina took control of the communications channel, speaking with authority that resonated across the station. "Identify yourself and state your purpose," she commanded. There was no immediate response. The vessel moved closer, its trajectory erratic, almost playful in its danger. Eli realized that it was testing them, probing for weaknesses. Vorina's eyes narrowed. She gestured, and shields on the station flared to life, creating a protective barrier. "Stay calm," she said to Eli. Think before you act. Eli followed her instructions, monitoring energy outputs and preparing the station's defense systems. His hands moved quickly, adjusting the shields, recalibrating the arrays. For the first time, he felt the thrill of action, the rush of knowing that his choices mattered not just to him, but to countless lives. The vessel hesitated, then attempted to breach the outer defenses. Vorina's control of the station's systems was precise, yet she allowed Eli to make key adjustments. Together, their efforts created a synchronized defense that repelled the intruder without firing a single shot. Afterward, Eli leaned against the railing, breathing heavily. "We did it," he said, disbelief in his voice. Vorina smiled faintly. You see the difference. Alone, either of us might fail. Together, we succeed." That night, Eli lay awake, thinking about the day's events. He had faced real danger, and for the first time, he felt capable. He also realized something more unsettling. He was beginning to respect, even admire, Vorina in ways he had never expected. She was more than a political partner. She was a teacher, a protector, and perhaps something he could trust completely. Over the next weeks, the partnership between Eli and Vorina grew stronger. He learned to anticipate threats, to navigate alien protocols, and to act with both courage and strategy. Vorina shared stories of her life, of Thrillian history and their long lives, of lessons learned through centuries. Eli listened, absorbing every detail, and found that his world was expanding in ways he could never have imagined. Yet not all was peaceful. Some humans in the colony whispered, jealous or fearful of Eli's unusual position. Some aliens, too, were wary, suspicious of a human who could keep pace with a Thrillian diplomat. Eli encountered scorn and doubt, but Vorina's steady presence reminded him that judgment from others was meaningless compared to his own growth. One evening, a young human engineer approached him nervously. "They're talking about you," he said. "They say you're too close to her, that you think too much like a Thrillian." Eli shook his head. "I don't care. If I can help, if I can learn, then that is enough." Vorina, standing nearby, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Humans often fear change. But change is necessary for survival. You are learning not just to live among us, but to thrive." Then came another incident, more serious than the first. A small rebel faction, opposed to human-alien unions, attempted to sabotage the station's life support. Eli and Vorina were alerted just in time. Working together, they neutralized the threat, Eli using his engineering skills, Vorina using her alien abilities. The rebels were captured, and Eli realized that the universe was far more dangerous than he had imagined. Yet he no longer felt powerless. He had learned that courage, intelligence, and trust could overcome fear, even when facing threats far beyond human scale. By the end of Part 2, Eli had changed. He was no longer the uncertain young human engineer. He was a partner to Vorina, someone who could act decisively under pressure, someone capable of learning and adapting at a pace even the Thrillians found impressive. And while he still felt awe and fear, he also felt excitement, for he knew that the universe held challenges and adventures that he was now ready to face. Eli had survived his first tests, and in doing so, had begun to prove something important. Humans were not weak. Humans could learn, adapt, and even shine in ways aliens might never expect. And Vorina, ever patient, had shown him the path. Together, they were no longer just a human and an alien forced into marriage. They were partners, allies, and perhaps something greater than either had imagined. As he looked out at the stars that night, Eli felt a stirring of anticipation. He did not know what lay ahead, but he knew that he would face it, not as a frightened human engineer, but as someone ready to meet the universe head-on, with Vorina at his side. And deep down, he wondered, could this forced union, this impossible marriage, become something extraordinary? Eli had started to feel at home on the station, yet he knew comfort could be dangerous. Vorina had taught him to expect the unexpected, and he had learned to trust his instincts. The calm moments between crises were precious, but he never let his guard down completely. Today, the station felt heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves whispered warnings. Vorina had summoned him early in the morning. The chamber where she waited overlooked the galaxy, the stars glinting like distant fires. She moved with her usual grace, her eyes steady and bright, but there was a tension Eli had not seen before. "There are developments," she said. "The rival faction is organizing. They do not like our alliance or the idea of a human-Thrillian partnership. They see it as weakness." Eli frowned. "Weakness, after everything we've done." "They are blind to strength they cannot measure," Vorina said softly. "They do not understand humans, but they will try to exploit what they fear." Eli felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had seen small attacks, minor sabotage, but now it seemed there was a larger plan at work. He thought of the rebels they had caught before and realized that this might just be the beginning. Over the next several days, Eli trained harder than ever. Vorina guided him, not just in technology but in strategy. They practiced scenarios, debated choices, and reviewed every system on the station. Eli had learned to anticipate problems before they appeared, but Vorina pushed him further. She taught him to think like an alien strategist, to see patterns and to act decisively. "You have improved," she said one evening, after a long session reviewing security protocols. "But improvement alone will not be enough. You must understand the consequences of hesitation, the value of foresight, and the courage to act when others would freeze." Eli nodded, feeling both pride and fear. He had grown stronger, smarter, and braver, but the universe was vast, and threats could come from places he could not imagine. Yet he felt ready, more than ever, to face what was coming. The first sign of danger arrived during the daily communication check. Vorina's eyes narrowed as she studied the monitors. Eli followed her gaze to a small fleet moving through the outer system. Their insignia was unfamiliar, and the ships moved with precision that suggested more than simple piracy. "They are not here for trade," Vorina said. "They are testing us, probing for weakness. If we fail to respond correctly, they will escalate." Eli felt his pulse quicken. He had never faced a fleet before. Humans rarely engaged in battles of this scale, and the thought of confronting multiple alien ships at once made his hands sweat. Yet he also felt a spark of determination. He had learned from Vorina he could act, adapt, and survive. The fleet approached, skimming the outer shields of the station. Eli and Vorina coordinated defenses together. The Thrillians relied on precision, humans on creativity, and Eli found himself at the center of their combined efforts. He directed energy flows, adjusted shield harmonics, and predicted enemy movements. Each decision was critical, and a single mistake could be fatal. Hours passed. The fleet tested every weak point, probing, retreating, and circling. Vorina remained calm, her hands guiding systems, her mind anticipating outcomes. Eli realized how much he had learned. He was no longer a young human engineer reacting blindly. He was a strategist, a partner in battle. Finally, the fleet retreated, seemingly frustrated by the station's defenses. Eli exhaled, exhausted but exhilarated. Vorina placed a hand on his shoulder. "Well done. You acted decisively and adapted faster than I expected. The human's unpredictability is sometimes a strength." Eli smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with victory. He had earned her respect, and perhaps more importantly, he had earned respect for himself. But their trials were far from over. Intelligence reports indicated that the rival faction had infiltrated nearby colonies, spreading propaganda and seeking allies. Eli realized that the danger was no longer confined to the station. It was political, systemic, and far-reaching. Vorina and Eli began planning a diplomatic mission, visiting multiple colonies to strengthen alliances and dissuade potential rebels. Eli's role was unusual. No human had ever represented their species in such a capacity. At first he felt self-conscious, unsure of how to speak to alien leaders or convey human interests effectively. Vorina guided him, teaching him the art of negotiation, observation, and persuasion. Their journey began smoothly. Eli was amazed by the diversity of the colonies, from sprawling metropolises built on gas giants to small outposts floating in asteroid belts. Each place had its own culture, its own challenges, and each encounter tested Eli in ways he had never imagined. On one colony, they were confronted by a leader who openly doubted a human's ability to participate in diplomacy. Eli felt the familiar heat of fear and humiliation, but he recalled Vorina's lessons. Speaking calmly, observing the leader's body language, and presenting solutions with clarity, he managed to earn a cautious respect. The Thrillians were impressed, and even the humans on the colony looked at him with admiration. Yet as they continued, it became clear that the rival faction was watching their every move. Sabotage attempts became more sophisticated. Communications were jammed, ships were sabotaged, and messages twisted to create distrust. Eli realized that he was learning not just strategy and diplomacy, but survival, vigilance, and the importance of trust. Vorina and he had to anticipate every move, understand every ally and enemy, and act quickly. One night as they rested on a small research station, Vorina shared a secret. The age difference between us is significant only to humans. For Thrylians, this is symbolic. I chose you because I see potential. I chose you because I believe humans can rise to challenges that even we may not expect. Eli listened, stunned. He had always thought the marriage was a political necessity, a forced alliance. Now he understood there was more. Vorina had chosen him because she believed in him, in human courage and adaptability. It was a thought both frightening and inspiring. Their journey brought them to the capital planet, the heart of the Thrillian alliance. Here, the stakes were highest. Rival factions moved openly, and political tensions were at their peak. Eli had never seen such complexity. Leaders negotiating in corridors, whispers in every corner, and eyes that watched him wherever he went. A crisis erupted when intelligence revealed that a rival Thrillian faction planned an attack on the capital, seeking to undermine the human-Thrillian alliance. Eli and Vorina had little time to prepare. Every decision mattered. The security teams were mobilized, defenses reinforced, and contingency plans drawn. Eli felt a surge of adrenaline. He had never faced a real threat on this scale, but he trusted his training, his instincts, and Vorina's guidance. Together, they coordinated the defense, predicting enemy movements, redirecting resources, and ensuring the safety of the population. The attack came at dawn. Enemy ships approached with precision, their movements calculated and relentless. Eli directed energy shields, recalibrated weapon systems, and monitored vital life support channels. Vorina moved with her usual calm, guiding teams, stabilizing systems, and making decisions that balanced strategy with compassion. Hours of tense action passed. Each moment was critical, each choice life or death. Eli marveled at how far he had come. He no longer felt fear in the way he once did. Fear was still present, but it was tempered by confidence, preparation, and trust. By late morning, the enemy fleet had been repelled. Damage was minimal, and casualties avoided. Eli and Vorina stood together on the observation deck, watching the retreating ships disappear into space. Eli felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had ever known. He had faced danger, acted decisively, and survived. He had proven that humans, when trusted and trained, could match even the most formidable alien intellect. That night, the capital celebrated their victory, but Eli knew that their challenges were far from over. The rival faction was still out there, plotting, waiting for opportunities. Politics, sabotage, and espionage were constant threats, Yet Eli felt prepared. He had grown in ways he could never have imagined. He was no longer the uncertain young human engineer. He was a partner to Vorina, a strategist, a defender, and perhaps even a symbol of human potential. As he lay in his quarters, Eli reflected on the journey so far. The forced marriage that had seemed like a curse was now a partnership, a bond of trust, learning, and shared purpose. He realized that humans were not weak, not insignificant. They could learn, adapt, and thrive even in the most alien and dangerous circumstances. Vorina's presence had transformed him. Her patience, guidance, and trust had taught him that fear could be overcome, that courage was learned, and that adaptability was a human strength no one could deny. Together, they had faced challenges, repelled threats, and proven that their union, though unexpected, could change the course of events in ways no one anticipated. And deep in his heart, Eli felt a quiet excitement. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous, but he was no longer afraid. With Vorina by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. He had learned that the impossible could be faced, that courage could be cultivated, and that humans, when given a chance, could rise to meet the greatest challenges. As the stars shimmered beyond the observation deck, Eli felt the promise of the future. He knew that the next battles would be harder, the political challenges more complex, and the enemies more cunning. Yet he also knew this: humans were capable, adaptable, and resilient. And together with Vorina, they would face whatever the universe sent, learning, growing, and proving that even the smallest species could leave an extraordinary mark. Eli had never felt so aware of the stakes in his life. The capital planet was tense, its citizens uneasy despite the recent victory. The rival Thrillian faction had retreated, but intelligence reports warned that their plans were far from over. They were gathering forces, seeking a way to strike that no one would expect. Eli and Vorina knew that this time the threat would not be small. The morning began quietly, but the calm was deceptive. Eli observed the stars from the observation deck, tracing patterns of approaching ships with the station's sensors. Vorina joined him, moving silently, her presence a steady anchor. She did not speak immediately, allowing Eli to focus, to absorb the situation, to trust his own instincts. "They are clever," she said finally, her voice calm. "But we have advantages they cannot predict. Adaptability, courage, and cooperation. We will use them." Eli nodded. He felt the weight of her words. It was not just about defending the station or the capital planet. This battle would determine the future of human-Thrillian relations, perhaps even the place of humans in the galaxy. He had grown far beyond the engineer who had been forced into marriage. He was now a strategist, a defender, and a partner in leadership. The enemy fleet arrived with unprecedented speed, their ships sleek, powerful, and numerous. The station's alarms blared, warning lights flashing red. Eli's heart raced, but he felt no panic. He had trained, he had learned, and he trusted Vorina completely. "Remember your training," she said. "React, anticipate, adapt. Use both your human instincts and your knowledge of our systems. You are ready." The first wave struck quickly. Ships attempted to breach the station's shields, their energy weapons testing the limits of its defenses. Eli coordinated with the station's crew, issuing commands, rerouting power, and predicting enemy movements. He found himself acting with instinct and precision, sometimes anticipating a strike before it happened. Vorina moved through the control room, her hands glowing faintly as she manipulated energy fields. She neutralized threats, redirected power, and guided Eli and the crew with calm authority. Together, they created a rhythm, a partnership that combined human creativity with Thrillian experience. Hours passed in tense battle. Enemy ships adapted, changing strategies, probing for weaknesses. Eli had to think quickly, adjusting shields, deploying drones, and managing resources. He realized how much he had grown. He was no longer the frightened human engineer. He was a leader, trusted and respected. At one point, an enemy ship broke through the outer defenses, heading straight for the station's central core. Eli acted immediately, sending countermeasures and rerouting power to the affected shields. Vorina reinforced the structural integrity with a wave of her hands, stabilizing the station. The threat was neutralized without damage, but Eli felt his pulse hammering in his chest. "You are doing well," Vorina said, her eyes meeting his. "Do not doubt yourself. Humans can accomplish more than you believe." The enemy fleet was relentless, but Eli and Vorina anticipated each move. They worked in unison, combining strategy and intuition, skill and courage. The crew of the station followed their commands flawlessly, inspired by the confidence and clarity of their leaders. Finally, the rival fleet attempted a desperate maneuver, concentrating their forces for a final strike. Eli realized this was their last chance. If they failed, the station and the capital planet could be devastated. He looked at Vorina, who nodded once, sharply, signaling readiness. Eli made a decision. He directed a diversion, splitting the enemy fleet, while Vorina strengthened the main defenses. The strategy worked. The enemy ships, caught off guard, faltered. Eli and Vorina's combined actions created openings that allowed the station's counterattack to succeed. One by one, the enemy ships retreated, their morale shattered by the unexpected human-Thrillian coordination. When the battle ended, the station was intact, the fleet victorious. Eli's chest heaved with exhaustion, but he felt exhilaration and pride. He had faced impossible odds and survived. He had proven not just his own capabilities, but the potential of humans when given opportunity, guidance, and trust. Vorina placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of both approval and reassurance. "You have grown, Eli. You have proven that humans are not weak. They are capable, resourceful, and brave." Eli realized how far he had come. The young man who had once felt small, forced into a marriage he did not want, had become a key figure in an interstellar alliance. He had learned courage, strategy, and trust. He had learned that humans could rise to challenges that even advanced alien civilizations might not expect. The aftermath of the battle brought new responsibilities. Eli and Vorina coordinated repairs, reassured colonies, and rebuilt trust among hesitant allies. Everywhere they went, humans and Thrillians alike recognized their effectiveness as partners. Eli's reputation grew, not just as a human representative, but as a symbol of adaptability, courage, and leadership. One evening, as the station's lights dimmed and the stars glimmered beyond the windows, Eli reflected on his journey. The forced marriage that had once seemed like a curse was now a partnership of respect, trust, and mutual growth. Vorina had chosen him not out of convenience or obligation, but because she saw potential, human potential that could change the course of events in ways no one had expected. Eli understood now that the union was more than political. It was a collaboration, a bond of minds and skills, a demonstration of what humans could achieve when given guidance, responsibility, and trust. He had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Adaptability was not weakness, but strength, and cooperation between species could create results far beyond what any one species could achieve alone. The final challenge came when intelligence revealed that remnants of the rival faction were planning a covert operation to destabilize the outer colonies. Eli and Vorina prepared immediately, assembling teams, securing colonies, and coordinating defenses. The mission required precision, speed, and careful planning. Eli's knowledge of human instincts, combined with Vorina's strategic foresight, proved crucial. When the operation began, Eli led a team of mixed humans and Thrillians to intercept the enemy. He relied on every skill he had learned: observation, anticipation, courage, and adaptability. Vorina oversaw the broader strategy, ensuring that the colonies remained secure while guiding Eli's team through dangerous terrain and unexpected obstacles. The enemy was clever, but Eli and his team were faster and more adaptable. They disrupted the operation, captured the leaders, and secured the colonies without major loss of life. Eli realized how far he had come. He was no longer a human forced into a marriage, no longer uncertain or fearful. He was a leader, a strategist, and a partner to one of the most capable beings he had ever known. When the mission concluded, Eli and Vorina returned to the station. The crew celebrated their success, but Eli found himself thinking about the future. There would be more threats, more challenges, and more opportunities for humans to prove themselves. He had learned that success required courage, adaptability, and cooperation, and that humans, when trusted and guided, could rise to the greatest challenges of the galaxy. Vorina stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "You have done well, Eli. The humans are beginning to earn respect across the system. They are being seen not as weak but as capable allies. This is just the beginning." Eli smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction and anticipation. The journey that had begun with fear, doubt, and resistance had led to growth, respect, and accomplishment. He had faced dangers, learned, and adapted. He had proven that humans could rise to challenges that no one had expected. As they stood together, observing the stars, Eli felt a quiet joy. He knew that the universe would continue to test them, but he was ready. He was no longer just a human engineer. He was a partner, a leader, and a symbol of what humans could achieve. With Vorina by his side, he felt capable of facing anything. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of mystery, danger, and possibility. Eli felt excitement rather than fear, knowing that together, he and Vorina could meet every challenge. The forced marriage that had once seemed impossible had become a union of purpose, trust, and courage. And in that union, humans and Thrylians alike had found a new hope, a symbol of collaboration, resilience, and the extraordinary potential of humanity. As the orbital station drifted through the galaxy, Eli knew that his life had changed forever. He had faced battles, navigated politics, and learned lessons that few humans ever could. And yet, he also knew this was only the beginning. Together with Vorina, he would continue to grow, to adapt, and to prove that humans could leave their mark on the stars. And in that thought, Eli found peace, purpose, and the quiet certainty that the universe had far greater adventures ahead, and that he would meet them, not as a frightened human, but as someone who had become strong, capable, and ready for anything.